Now, if we're talking about pure history of the Order of the Golden Dawn, it was never originally called the HOGT, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, as David Griffin claims. So that shows he really doesn't have the direct link. It was referred to as the Order of the Golden Dawn, but not the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. And as for Raggedy, publishing the works and that resulting in the Golden Dawn nearly being destroyed, no, it's not. It was nearly destroyed. In fact, it was. That's why they had to rename it the Stella Matutina, because of the Horus scandal. When that hit the headlines around 1901, and it went to court because the Horus stole a lot of documents from Mathers and used them in their so-called sex scandal. And of course, when the Horus, husband and wife were arrested, the prosecution as evidence claimed that they were using black magic, and the associated publicity of the trial was no more than 7 days in the national press. But the effect that it had was drastic on the public. Everybody was scandalized by it, and the name of the Golden Dawn was brought to light and associated with this negativity, unwarrantedly so. But that's what happened. Okay. And, it was Crowley that published the Secret Rituals first anyway, in Volume 1, Number 4, pages 4 to 5, for example, summarized. But in 1904, he was ordered directly and definitely by a person who proved himself to be a messenger of a secret chief, 8 = 3, to publish the knowledge and rituals of the order, in order to destroy that knowledge so that the new knowledge would be revealed by himself and might have room to grow, in order to stop the frauds of Mathers, which were a disgrace to arcane science. And he came up with a number of excuses, saying he hadn't broken his oath, and he gave various excuses, weak as they were. So a great amount of Golden Dawn material was thus given to the public for the first time then, when he published them in around 1904. So it wasn't really Raggedy that had done it first. And most of it was abbreviated with the object of attracting interested inquirers to become members of Crowley's own organization. That was his end game, which was by that time it became active. He had been removed from the original society by the poet, W.B. Yeats, who was the chief in charge around 1900s to I can't remember when, and after his dismissal he went to see Mathers, who initiated him into the higher degrees in the Temple of Horus in Paris. He was then instructed to ask Yeats for the papers relating to this grade. Of course this grade was refused, so Crowley is alleged to have broken into the London premises in order to obtain the papers. Okay, and this is when the Battle of Blythe Road occurred, when because there's a lot of things that Mathers did in Paris which the order in England considered was negligence on Mathers' part. He wasn't really doing anything much. The Stella Matutina started there due to the schism between his order, which he had founded in England with Westcott, and Westcott sided with the original order and Yeats for a while, and then he was forming the Stella Matutina with other members, and he's the one that brought Crowley in, and Crowley is the one that actually started betraying the Golden Dawn. It wasn't really Raggedy. So secret papers were produced. Okay, so most of the Golden Dawn material was published in the Equinox. Okay, this was Crowley's publication in a series entitled The Temple of Solomon the King, which also included a great amount of Crowley's work, which he added to it, of course. It was his time to promote himself, so he took every opportunity to do that, and he was very good at self-promotion. According to J.O. Fuller, 1965, most of the editing of the early volumes was done by Victor Newberg and General Fuller. The office and headquarters was then at 124 Victoria Street, which was Crowley's flat. So that's where the publication took place. Many of the other secret papers were reproduced without any reference to their source. Okay, for example, Libero in Volume 1, Number 2, page 13, is an almost verbatim rehash of Document B, the Lesser and Supreme Rituals of the Pentagram, to give just one example. Further information was given in his now famous book, the Book 4, which was issued around about 1911 in 4 parts. And from 1929, this was collated into one massive volume, and is still being published to this day, entitled Magic and Theory and Practice. And it's still probably the best book. I shouldn't say best, but one of the most complete works on the subject. In 1909, Crowley published 777. Once again, it was a collation of other people's work. A lot of it came from Mather's material, and he just stamped his name to it, which was common for him to do. Anyway, and it was reissued in America by Gerber in 1955 with additions from Crowley's own notes. This is without doubt the most complete list of correspondences available and is arranged to fit the tree of life with mathematical precision. Well, this was the case until the Complete Magician Tables was published by Stephen Skinner, and in my opinion that is the best reference book. Okay, but back then Crowley's work was very useful to the aspiring magician. Okay, so it came about that from 1909 onwards, the material of a previously secret system, the Golden Dawn, was made available to those who wished to study it, and there is no doubt that many did quite independently of any official temple or organized groups, through soul study, etc., and forming a study group. So that it was somewhat abbreviated and attenuated did not really matter, as those who were interested could find the basic material on which to work. Okay. Alright, now let's get back to the Horus. As we will see, the first publicity the order received was on account of the Horus's trial, with its adverse comments in the press. Okay, this is in the early 1900s. The second was still in the 1900s, but in early 1910. Just 2 days after the bound copies of Volume 1, Number 3 of the Equinox had been delivered from the printers, an injunction to restrain publication was issued by Mr. Justice Bucknell at the request of Mathers. So Mathers got wind of this and thought, okay, he's got to do something to stop all this coming out to the public, because it was destroying the order. Okay, both the scandal and Crowley's publication. Okay. Alright, this was in the main because this issue was to contain the ritual of the ceremony of the Adeptus Minor. Okay, and this is one of the most important rituals of the whole system. Alright, so of course he was extremely alarmed. The subsequent legal proceedings both delayed the issue of the Equinox and gave rise to a vast amount of publicity, and it was unwanted. But this is what happens when something is about to be published. The only way to stop it is through legal means. Once you go that way, boom, the press has it. And then everybody will have a field day because it connects the dots negatively with any dirt that the press can dig up to sell the newspapers, and then this is exactly what happened. So it wasn't Raggedy that destroyed the order or whatever. I mean, the order was on a real decline. The only one that survived this and flourished was the Whārera in New Zealand. Okay, this is one of the reasons Falcon thought, okay, fresh start, great place, great enthusiastic people, it's an isolated spiritual country, and boom, that's where it flourished. Because in Europe and United States, all these scandals and publications, you know, by the Horaces and Crowley's self-aggrandization, more or less killed the Golden Dawn's growth. Didn't kill the order completely, but it killed its growth. The numbers dwindled to a mere handful. So most of the daily newspapers at that time published long sensational articles on the case and on so-called Rosicrucian teachings, as well as reproducing many of the diagrams used in the grade ceremonies. And of course, to the layman, they were saying, what the hell is this? It's all very demonic, weird. And, you know, once again, people were shocked. They didn't want to have anything to do with this. Only a few people were thinking, wow, this is interesting, this is cool. Now, after this injunction, Crowley immediately lodged an appeal, and he had vast amount of money, his inheritance, of course, which he was spending recklessly. That by the end of his, or near the end of his life, he was virtually broke. But anyway, he had enough money, so he immediately lodged an appeal, which was subsequently allowed, and the volume was published. Much to Mather's discomfort, with further publicity attached to it. This time it was the source which destroyed the true value, as by this time Crowley's reputation had become so notorious that many people did not even bother to examine the material because of it. Okay, the main Golden Dawn ceremonial is described in Volume 1, Numbers 2 and 3, but many of the organization's teachings were given throughout the series, in most cases without acknowledgement of the source. This was to make them appear to have been the work of Crowley himself, which naturally, was very naughty to say the least. Okay, and this is in R.G. Torrens's own words. I'm quoting a lot of this material from The Secret Rituals of the Golden Dawn, published by R.G. Torrens. Okay, this book, when was it published? In 1969, I think it was. Yeah, so anyway. The revelations of Israel Raggedy, let's get to that. The greater revelation came in 1937, when Israel Raggedy published in Chicago the complete documents of the Golden Dawn, together with the magical instructions used by that body. This comprised 4 large volumes, which, although containing most of the available material, were very difficult for the ordinary reader or student to follow because of the great amount of information therein. Okay, this was preceded in the previous year by a book entitled My Rosicrucian Adventure, which was extremely popular. It's still available to this day in paperback format. It's an interesting read. It doesn't have everything laid down correctly, has some assumptions, but there's a lot of background information which is really interesting to read, and it became a valued book on the account and history of the order and Raggedy's association with it. What is not too clear is when Raggedy joined the Golden Order, or with which temple he was associated. And I think more recently Tony Fuller's research and Nick Farrell's research and Pat Zaleski's research and a couple of the others have shone some light to this. But that as it may, the 4 volumes of the Golden Dawn soon became a much sought after work. And at the time that R.G. Torrens published this book, around 1969, had been reprinted in 2 volumes in 1969, and then it became 1 volume, which we have now. And now there have been other versions that have been put out. But up to edition 6, it was 1 volume. It became 1 volume. And it still is 1 volume, but it's no longer just Reggedy's work. Now let's have a look at Reggedy's reason for issuing the rituals, okay? So to quote in Reggedy's own words, "Any student who has gained a sympathetic understanding of the Golden Dawn teaching will be capable of discriminating between the futile, reprehensible portions of Crowley's work and of deciding which part of it is a worthwhile addition to an already magnificent system. And it is because Crowley concedes to his own credit in his, in many respects, admirable volume entitled Magic, that he has done magic an inestimable service by reason of his development of it, that I have considered it imperative, together with a number of other reasons of equal urgency, to place the Golden Dawn system before the public. Crowley's claims are, in my estimation, wholly exaggerated. I am far from convinced that the scheme of theory and practice presented in his literature, extraordinary though it is in many ways, considering that it is a development of a simple basic Golden Dawn material, is equal in any way to the system put into documentary form by S. L. McGregor Mathers and his colleagues. Therefore he published it, so people could see the difference. Anyway, that's his reasoning. So, at last, the light of the Golden Dawn was available to illuminate the dark corners of occultism. At last was the whole system laid bare for the student. In the past, many partial teachings had been published, but now the complete workings of a system which would correlate many of the diverse workings of the past were available. During the last 70 years, there have been many bodies formed, both here in Europe and in America, with their teachings based on the Golden Dawn rituals and documents published by Israel Regedy and some other people. So, far from Griffin's claim that Regedy caused the Golden Dawn temples to close, it's had the opposite effect. It has impacted and influenced just about every modern, well, I would say every modern Golden Dawn order that has sprung since the late 70s, including David Griffin's own temple. Okay, although he suffered some form of amnesia. I'm becoming dyslexic here. And he's not giving credit at all to Regedy, which is weird because he sought after Chris Monastra, Pat Bayman is her original name, who he knew used to be, for a very short time, Israel Regedy's young girlfriend. He sought her out because he wanted to become something in the Golden Dawn, and he wanted to create his own temple, and he got her limited knowledge, God bless her soul, due to alcoholism, etc. She forgot many things, and if you've ever had an alcoholic in your family or a friend, it's very difficult for them to really get their life together. And so she was in a state of frailty, and he became her boyfriend for a while, even though he was officially still married. I've got no opinion on that. I mean, it's, do as he likes, so to speak, but I'm just telling you the fact. And from that, he got started in the Golden Dawn, and through Chick Cicero's beautiful vault, he was initiated. Okay, that is his lineage. Later on, when he had aspirations of taking over the organization, He used his money to challenge the Ciceros for the name Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which at that time was shared by the Ciceros and Chris Menastra. And the Ciceros litigated with Griffin, and the name is available to both. In the United States, it's got one derivative. In Europe, it's got another, but it's now open thanks to the Ciceros. And what do we have? We have David Griffin. God bless his soul. I don't know why he is so confused, but I hope he hears this and is man enough to admit that the facts are what I've stated. He then claimed that he was the imperator of the Golden Dawn, and he's not. He is just an imperator of his temple, despite what he's still publishing now. Okay? And despite his claims, Israel Regedi did not destroy the Golden Dawn at all. In fact, there are so many temples that have sprouted up because of him. And on the other side of the world is the Farara lineage, which has helped correct a lot of incorrect information that was published by Regedi. That is a valued tradition there. But even then, that more or less died out. There's no direct link to Mathis in any temple. There's the Farara lineage, there's the Regedi Cicerio lineage, and there's others now. So that's the fact. Now, he goes on, after he sought after the Regedi lineage and gained what he gained from Chris Menastra, and then he started creating his own false connection to MacGregor Mathers. What does he do? He tries to stab the so-called Regedi Golden Dawn lineage in the back. Okay, the same source where he got his information, he now says, is there a Regedi Golden Dawn lineage? And this is what he states. The publications of Israel Regedi unfortunately have recently engendered a host of modern American groups on the internet calling themselves Golden Dawn, but have no connection to the original Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn founded in Europe in 1888. The teachings of these Regedi-based groups derive almost without fail entirely from the Golden Dawn material published by Israel Regedi, which dead ends partially through the Adeptus Minor 5=6 level. In desperate mover to give themselves an air of legitimacy, certain Regedi-based groups have deliberately created a myth of a Regedi Golden Dawn lineage. Such a notion, however, is highly problematic. Israel Regedi knew that he had no authority to initiate or grant a charter to anyone, and honestly admitted this on numerous occasions, as for example in the attached letter. And it's correct, he didn't claim that. He didn't. But, he started temples with his own authority through his own knowledge. And this is where David Griffin got his grading system from Chris Menastra, who was, for a short time, an Israel Regedi student. So what is he talking about? If it wasn't for her being connected to Regedi, he wouldn't have had his grades. So really, he's confusing himself. He's denying something that he was part of, and then he's accusing others of creating a myth, yet he's the one that's created the myth. He's the one that's saying that Frater Aliti appeared, and it's a real person, connected to the original person in continental Europe who gave the, certain papers of the inner order to MacGregor Mathers. MacGregor Mathers was inspired. It was a vision. It was most likely the Archangel Raphael. Okay? So, if we ask, David, where is this fraternity? Oh, I can't tell you because it's a secret link and it's a secret order and it's still existing and they've only entrusted him. How does that sound? Does that sound honest to you? Or does that sound highly plausible and like pure horseshit? I'll let you decide. I've made up my decision. I've researched this for a year. I've kept an open mind, but now it's a little bit too much. Once again, I like David on a personal note. We've had some great conversations, but geez, when he keeps pushing this stuff after the peace initiative, and he's still emailing me that this is his lineage and this is who he is and the others are bogus. No. It's time that I told the facts. Then he goes on, fully aware of these facts, Israel Regedi nonetheless did consecrate a vault of the Adepti in 1982 in order to initiate his student Chris Monastra into the Adeptus Minor 5=6 grade. Well, the fact is he did initiate Chris Monastra, Pat Bayman, into the Adeptus Minor 5=6 grade when she was only a 2=9. When she was only a neophyte, 0=0. She was being taught by a 2=9 student of his. So she hadn't gone through the grades, but he thought, okay, he would give her that grade. She showed some promise. At that time, she was dating Israel Regedi for a short time. Okay, now, the Ciceros, we have a letter, an actual postcard by Israel Regedi that shows that the Ciceros invited Israel Regedi to be part of the ceremonies and to go through a reinitiation with them. Okay, that part didn't eventuate, but he gave his blessing, and he was really happy that the Ciceros had created the vault, and he didn't go there just for the sole purpose of initiating Chris Monastra, because this happened a couple of years later, in fact a year later or a couple of years later, after he had consecrated the vault, and he gave his blessings to the Ciceros initiation team to initiate other people. Okay, and they had been more or less building their own temple before Israel Regedi came in to consecrate the vault. They invited him, and it wasn't for the sole purpose of initiating Chris Monastra at all. He gave his blessing to the Ciceros to do their thing, and he was really happy with them. That's the fact. So, certainly more than just a little bit of slanting the facts here in David's way, misrepresenting the facts there a little. Then he goes on to say these events provided fertile soil for a myth of a Regedi Golden Dawn lineage to be deliberately cultivated by certain Regedi-based groups following Regadi's death. It should be noted that in his life, Regedi only had 4 students. These were Chris Monastra, William Kennedy, Larry Epperson, and Alan Miller, who was Chris Hyatt. Regedi never endorsed any Regedi-based Golden Dawn group or order, although this imprimatur has been putatively claimed by a variety of organizations following his death. Well then, David, then you're in a bit of a conundrum, because you gained legitimacy through Chris Monastra, who was initiated by Regedi. So your lineage is really through Regedi, yet you're peeing on Regedi and everybody else associated with Regedi. So how can you then claim you're anything? Because you only got your degrees, your grades through Chris Monastra in Chick Cicero's vault. And when Chick Cicero's group challenged you to follow through and go through the requirements of the grades, you objected. And you said, I'm already an adept, I didn't have to do that. And you caused the schism there. You know, instead of being a nice guest, then you accused him of doing the pizza thing, and accused him of creating the pizza schism because he didn't like the pizza you ordered. How ludicrous is that? You're a bit delusional. Okay, anyway, I just have to put this to light now because, this is what really happened. So there's a nice veneer here painted by David Griffin, which unfortunately just doesn't add up when you do the research. A little bit of tweaking here and words and counterclaiming this and that. So he's peeing on the Regedi line, and yet he comes from, the only legitimacy he has is through the Regedi line in the Cicero vault. Yet he's peeing on these people. Why? I'll tell you why. Getting back to what I stated earlier and what you can see, because he is claiming he is the Imperator of the Golden Dawn, that he somehow later went to Europe when he only had the warrant from Chris Monastra to form the temple representing her. It was the Monastra Griffin group, okay? And the Monastra connection was Israel Regedy. Didn't have anything else. Started it in Europe. Then he had money, so he challenged the Ciceros, whatever. Then after that, all of a sudden, he claimed to have been visited, okay, by Frater L.E.T., who was descendant from the original Frater L.E.T. Doesn't that seem a little bit odd to you? Okay, who had given the original material to Mackenzie, who then passed it on to, or should I say, the material was passed on to Westcott. Well, that's a bit wrong, because Frater L.E.T. appeared to Mathers in a vision. So it seems. And he wouldn't be alive to this day anyway, so it's nonsense. Okay, anyway, so I hope I've laid and put that ghost to rest, that myth. Alright, and it's still on this site, so this is the only reason I'm bringing it up now, because I've worked quite hard at my end as a mediator for the peace. A lot of the other groups, a lot of people, some I don't like anyway, but they've been quiet, they've been cooperative, they've been good with the peace. They haven't been publishing any false claims. I've looked at their sites, and yet here we have David Griffin, and still to this day, June 29th, 2015, he's still perpetuating these myths that he is the only direct descendant and the only heir to the system, and it's just not true. No one is the heir to the system. It died a long time ago, and his lineage is through Regedy, so I don't see why he's peeing on him. Doesn't make sense.